The Haunted Hotel by Nancy Roberts. At the foot of the Sierras in California Gold Rush country nestles the small village of Ione. On Ione's main street once stood an uncommonly haunted-looking hotel. The building was quintessential Old West. You almost expected a gunfight to erupt at any moment, shots to ring out, and a body to pitch headlong over the second-story balcony. Millie and William Jones had longed to own this hotel for years. Thus, when they were finally able to buy it, they could scarcely believe their good fortune. We wanted to live here ourselves so that we could make it a hospitable place for other people. We moved into the 3 front rooms on the second floor, said Millie. But somehow her warmth and graciousness did not offset the atmosphere of Hotel Ione. When they bought the hotel in April 1977, the Joneses were all aware that it needed extensive remodeling, so they began cleaning and painting. They even moved the dining room from the rear to its present position at the front, where now we sat with a view of Main Street. Millie told me the following story. It was a warm afternoon, June 22nd, when I saw the first apparition. I was quite busy, for I was expecting the Chamber of Commerce for breakfast the next morning. Annie, our dishwasher, and I were the only ones there at the time of day. In the course of my preparations, I went back into the old dining room and was amazed at what I saw. Floating in the air in the center of the room was a cloud of what appeared to be smoke. The strangest thing about it was that it did not dissipate, but seemed to retain a pyramidal shape, except for a somewhat rounded top. At first I was afraid that something must be on fire, but I checked and nothing had been left on the stove. For a little while I just stood there, watching, almost hypnotized. Then I edged up closer and blew at it, just as hard as I possibly could. I finally managed to blow it away, but in a minute or two it came back again, in exactly the same shape. As I watched it hover there, it began to vibrate, and as the smoky form moved back and forth, I began to tremble and could feel every hair on the back of my neck stand straight up. I don't know when I have been so frightened. I knew I needed some help, so I hurried and got the dishwasher. Annie, there's smoke here in the dining room. There's nothing burning. I know, but what is that? I asked, pointing at the pyramid. There's been a lot of people in here smoking. Not today. Not a living soul has been in here. It's not like smoke after people leave a room. I just blew this away and it came back the same shape. Don't tell me that. I was just in here and fanned it with this towel and it went away and returned the same way, said Annie. And then she said, I know what that is, but I don't want to say it, so we'll say it together. Ghost, we both said in shaky voices. Then you know what we did? We ran. That was the first experience with our ghost, and to the best of my knowledge, the spirit never came back in that form. During those first few months that we were open, there was a customer who came to the hotel cafe regularly. A tall woman with piercing black eyes and straight iron gray hair that she wore in a large, soft bun on the back of her head. I remember her well. She had studied life after death and the supernatural and religious aspects of the afterlife. A very serious, scholarly lady she was, with all sorts of degrees. Sometimes we talked a little about ghosts when she was here and I wasn't busy, and I made no bones about what a fright the shape in the old dining room had given Annie and me. "I'll be glad to help you find out who it is," she offered. "No, thanks," I said. But she insisted on giving me her card just the same. "In the event you have any problems, I will be glad to come and help you." Of course, my reaction was, what could a puff of smoke do? As time went on, our dining room was completed. We had very nice flatware and attractive placemats, and we put candles on each table. Let me tell you, there was a real thrill of accomplishment when we had it all ready for our first guests. There was just one problem, and it was so incredible that we didn't know what to do about it. Except for those at one table, the candles proceeded to light by themselves. We tried leaving the dining room and locking the door after us, but when we came back in, the room was aglow with lights. All the candles were burning. We managed to get most of them to stay out, but there was always one table where they would come back on. And that was the one right in the center of the room. This was the area where I had first seen the ghost. Of course, it was vitally important that none of our guests see this strange phenomena. One night we were expecting the prestigious Historical Society from Stanford University. Since they had made reservations for a dinner party, we were going to make sure all the candles did not relight by themselves. If any guests left early, we would not extinguish the candles at their table. Moreover, we decided that after everyone was gone, we would simply remove all the candles from the dining room. That should solve the problem. But our troubles were not over. Shortly before our guests were to arrive, there was a most awful odor in the dining room, and I did not know what in the world to do. Have you ever heard that spirits sometimes have an odor accompanying their presence? Well, I rushed over to the hardware store, got a lamp with an aromatic candle in it, and proceeded to burn it in the dining room. In a few minutes, the odor was completely gone, and I was so thankful, for everything smelled just wonderful. Everyone enjoyed a lovely dinner, and they lingered, drinking coffee and talking. Finally, after the last guest had left, after midnight, we removed the candlesticks and locked the door. The next morning I came down about 5:30 to fix breakfast, and the entire hotel smelled like frankincense and patchouli oil, sickeningly sweet. When I unlocked the door to the back room, the candles were burning once more. They had been moved from the top shelf of my grandmother's buffet to the bottom shelf, and they were burned completely down to a tiny flame. That's when I called the lady who offered to come if I needed help. The hotel had burned down once, and by now you can understand that I was quite alarmed. I began to feel that this hotel was more subject to fire than most. We arranged for the woman who had studied the supernatural to come Saturday night at 10 o'clock. I felt so silly even then that I remember joking, "It needs to be night, and I must have a black cat under the table." When she arrived, I brought the whole staff into the dining room. Then it would be good if someone not connected with the hotel were present too. So I went to the front door, and the first person I found was a gentleman from here in town who was not intoxicated. I'm not saying that's unusual, but we were lucky because it was a Saturday night. We all held hands and asked for a protective circle of faith from God, and each person said a prayer to himself for assistance in case this thing should come out. I had real reservations, and I said to the woman, "This could be frightening. It may be that I'm exposing these people to something dangerous." "They're here of their own free will," she said, and she began to talk to the darkness all around us. Beside her was a candle that she had blown out, but the apparition kept lighting it. We had divided up some paper into several pieces, and we each had a pen. "We know you are here, but who are you?" I heard her say. Nothing happened, and all of us just rolled our eyes around, trying to see each other's faces in the dark. I was really afraid, I must admit. "Come on. You are disturbing Millie Jones, and I want to know who you are. You have a problem, and we can help you." There was no answer. My heart began to thump so hard that it was all I could think about. Then came a startling noise. The medium had struck her hand sharply on the tabletop. I started to cry out and said, "I really don't want to do this," but I heard the harsh, almost angry voice of the medium speak to me. "Hold on to your pen." My arm hurt between my elbow and hand and got very, very hot as the pen wrote. It was as if a strong but invisible hand were guiding my own. The words formed on the paper said, "Mary Phelps." I read it and heard my own voice saying, "It fits me." And the medium said, "All right, Mary Phelps, you have a problem. Now we can help you." My hand began to move across the paper. I had to use my left hand to spread the pages out in order to hold the words. Mary Phelps wrote that she lost a baby in a room fire in 1884. Other questions were asked, but no one got to write it as I did. Someone asked what was the baby's name, and the medium wrote, "Baby John." You just held your pen, though you did not have to hold it tightly. It just wrote. And when Mary Phelps was through talking through you, your arm relaxed. I tried to trick her. I asked, what was the room number? They have been changed often, and sometimes on New Year's Eve, one of the guests, as a prank, will change a room number. I knew that the hotel had not burned down almost until 10 years later in 1893, and I was puzzled. My hand began going back and forth, and I thought it was just relaxing from having been used as my instrument. Around the whole table, nothing was happening except that my arm would not stop moving back and forth until the medium said, "You must be more specific, Mary Phelps. Which room?" At this question, the pen shot off the page in a sharp line, and then my arm went limp and dropped. I said, "I just can't imagine what this could be." Then I realized there were no room numbers then. In a moment, my arm moved once more, and my hand, traveling across the page, independent of my own will, wrote, "Go where the wall is bent." 2 days later, a member of our bartending staff said, "Well, I know where the wall is bent. It's on the second floor, right outside number 9. We assumed that this must have been the room in which the baby boy John died. And that was not a hotel fire, it was a room fire. That's why it was 1884 rather than 1893. A year later, in October, I was cooking dinner. 8 people came in when we were almost ready to close. After they were served, the waitress came back to the kitchen and said, "You have some fans in there who would like to meet the chef." I went in and curtsied, and they applauded. A young lady in the party was especially enthusiastic. "I just love this hotel. I don't know why we've never been here before, for we live in Calaveras County." "That really isn't far from here. I hope you'll come again." "Your waitress tells me you have ghosts," came the unexpected reply. "Yes, it seems to be a lady named Mary Phelps." When they heard that, the group went, "Ooh." A Mexican gentleman among them turned to the young lady I had been talking with and said, "I'm going into the bar to talk with your husband. I don't want to hear this." The face of the girl turned very white. My maiden name was Mary Phelps. My grandmother and great-grandmother, who were named Mary Phelps, at one time they lived in this hotel. You can be sure that I was as shocked as she was. The next day she came back, bringing her grandmother, who held in her hand a small, black leather-covered diary written in Gaelic. She translated as she read from one of the pages, written by Mary Phelps in 1884. The words were, "I have recently lost my little son Ian in a hotel fire." In Gaelic, Ian means John. The entire family came back and burned a candle in the dining room for the child. We heard no more from the spirit of Mary Phelps, except on October 26th, 1980, just after we did a television show for That's Incredible. At that time, Mary Phelps was seen by a couple from Sacramento who, I think, were hoping to see another apparition who had been mentioned on the television show and who appears here occasionally. There was once a workman living here named George Williams. He would work quite late, and he didn't always bother to lock his room. When he returned, he would sometimes find that an intoxicated friend was asleep in his bed. He would shake the bed until he could get his friend to get up, saying, "I'm sorry, you can't sleep here." George eventually died, but we've had complaints from men who have occupied this room. They say that an angry old fellow has pulled the covers off of them and tried to shake them out of the bed, saying loudly, "I'm sorry, you can't sleep here." I don't think he's ever bothered a woman in the room, only men. The couple from Sacramento did not see George, but the wife had a vivid experience. She awakened to see a woman dressed in black with a little bonnet on and her arms stretched out, pleading with her. "Help me. Help my baby out of the fire. Help me, please," said the woman. We were convinced that it was Mary Phelps. The couple had retired quickly after arriving the night before, and we'd had no opportunity to mention anything to them about Mary. The entire incident was remarkable, but finding out that Mary was a real person seems the strangest sort of coincidence, like something that would never happen in a million years, said Millie Jones, staring thoughtfully out at Main Street through the window of the hotel dining room. "Help me get my baby out," she said almost to herself, repeating Mary Phelps' plea. The poor woman. A year after the story was written, the hotel I owned burned to the ground. The cause of the fire was never discovered. From its early years, the hotel was subject to manifestations of fire, from the candles relighting to the mysterious smoky form that was sometimes seen floating through the air on the lower floor. The hotel I owned was at 41 Main Street in Ione, California. Should you ask me whether I think it was haunted or not, all I can say is that I felt it was from the moment I stood in the lobby and looked up the stairs to the second floor. The end.